In London, Anthony Albanese is among those bidding a final farewell to the Queen.
It's an honour for me to be here to represent Australia at the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II.
There has never been a stronger link between Australia and a head of state. It was 1954 when Elizabeth made history as the first reigning monarch to visit.
I thank you most sincerely for the welcome you have given me and my husband.
Over the following 60 years, she would return to Australia another 15 times, opening Canberra's new Parliament House, attending 2 Commonwealth Games, and opening the Sydney Opera House.
I have much pleasure in declaring the Sydney Opera House open.
But the Queen's position as our head of state wasn't without controversy. When her Australian representative, Governor-General Sir John Kerr, sacked the Whitlam government in 1975, it provoked outrage.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen, because nothing will save the Governor-General.
It wasn't until 2020 that palace letters revealed the Queen had been kept in the dark about the decision, but the fallout from the dismissal helped fuel the growing Republican movement. But even many staunch Republicans believed a change could not be made during Elizabeth's lifetime.
A no vote is a vote for the British monarchy and King Charles III.
In 1999, in the referendum on whether to become a republic, Australia voted no.
All of us who voted yes can be proud tonight. We did what was right.
The Queen's 16th and final visit to Australia was in 2011, welcomed by our first female Prime Minister and lifelong Republican, Julia Gillard.
You can only ever be welcomed as a beloved and respected friend.
Australia's well represented at tonight's funeral. In addition to the PM and other dignitaries, the palace requested the attendance of 10 other Australians who'd made outstanding contributions to their communities.
I was overwhelmed by the invitation. I represent my family, my people, and Australians.
As the UK farewells their much-loved late monarch, Australia too pays its final respects to our Queen Elizabeth II. And Julia Gillard joins us now from London. Thank you so much for joining us on this occasion. You were, of course, the last Prime Minister to host the Queen in Australia. How will you remember her?
Yes, I was. And at the time, all of us knew it was going to be the last time she was in Australia. I mean, it was never said, but of course it was assumed that that would be her last visit. And she came because we were hosting the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Perth. But she took the opportunity to visit very widely around Australia, I think in recognition that that would be the last time that she'd get to say hello and goodbye in a personal visiting sense to the people of Australia. I do remember how well received she was, how big the crowds were. I remember her quiet diplomacy in and around the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And I remember her sense of fun. We did things like a formal cocktail party at the Great Hall in Parliament House. And when the toast came to the Queen, I was joking with her that she should take a sip of her champagne. And she was very, oh no, you never drink when it's been a toast to yourself. I'm like, oh, OK. That's a life lesson I didn't know. All of these years I've been cheerfully sipping away if people raised a toast. So she was good fun to be around.
Julia, your views on Australia becoming a republic were obviously well known when you became PM. Did you ever have a chance or discuss that with her in any capacity when you met her?
There was no need to talk about it in detail. I mean, obviously, she was well aware of the Republican referendum in Australia, that I am a lifelong Republican, as have been many other Prime Ministers. And, you know, for Australia, for countries across the Commonwealth, the Crown has never sought to intervene in any Republican debate. The attitude that's been taken is that nation states obviously chart their own course. But the Queen did want to keep investing in the Commonwealth, and of course you can stay in the Commonwealth even when you become a republic. Many of the nations in the Commonwealth no longer have, you know, the Queen or now King Charles as their head of state. So I think, you know, her investing in that as an institution was part of a recognition that her reign would bring with it what has been referred to across history now for several decades as the winds of change, that nations would make different decisions decisions about their future.
Well, Hamish and I were over covering Will's and Kate's wedding all those years ago. You were there at the time as Prime Minister, and I remember you copped some criticism at the time for being there. But what do you think it was about the Queen that managed over the years to charm even Republicans?
Well, of course, I was here in my official capacity. It was appropriate for Australia to be represented. Other nations right around the Commonwealth were represented by their leaders, and so I came. I do think that there's a separation here between a personal view about what should happen for Australia's future, and I know, for example, our current Prime Minister has a deeply held personal view that we should be a republic, but also what you need to do to represent the nation at a critical time. And clearly this final farewell to Queen Elizabeth II is bringing the world together, and it's appropriate he's here. It was appropriate all those years ago that I was at the royal wedding.
Julia, I'm actually interested to know how you feel about being there in this moment as someone with such strong personal views, but also that personal experience of the Queen.
Yeah, it's been an absolutely fascinating time to be here, and it continues to be. I mean, I spend quite a bit of time just pounding London streets because, frankly, it's the easiest way to get around with all of the road closures and the very big crowds. And I've been watching the crowds over the last week and even this morning, and there's, you know, a real sense of coming together. There's a quietness to it that you don't necessarily associate with big crowds. I mean, our experience of big crowds in Australia, perhaps massing for a football match or something, there's a lot of energy in the crowd, a lot of high spirits. It's nothing like that. It's people very quiet, getting to where they need to be, quiet conversations amongst themselves. So it's a very different feel than any other kind of mass public event I've ever been part of. And of course, I've got a lot of British friends, and they've been engaging in all sorts of reflections about what it means for them. And I think it's, you know, there's a personal level to those reflections, but there's also a history level. People have got the really deep sense that this is the end of an era, and it's the end of an era at what already is a very profound time of change for the world and for the United Kingdom and its role in the world post-Brexit. So it really is a fascinating time to be here.
Julia, it's Lisa here, also in London, possibly not terribly far from where you are at the moment. Some people have called Elizabeth a feminist. Do you think that's a fair characterisation?
I have severe doubts she would have used that word about herself, but I do think she's made a feminist contribution in the sense that we know that role modelling of women's leadership, role modelling of women on the public stage does make a difference to the aspirations of girls and young women. If they can see someone else doing it, being in those rarefied halls and environments, they can imagine themselves being there. And I think over many decades she did create that kind of image. And Prime Minister Theresa May, former Prime Minister May, did remark to me when I spoke to her for the book that I co-wrote on women and leadership that she thought that the many decades of the Queen's service had helped normalise a version of female leadership for the United Kingdom. And of course, the United Kingdom has now just joined a very elite club of nations with 3 female leaders. So it's only New Zealand, Finland and the United Kingdom that have had 3 female Prime Ministers.
Well, Julia, it's been fascinating chatting to you tonight and getting your thoughts. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Lovely to speak to you.